This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to a big game day edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Tonight, 7 p.m., Canada Life Center. It's the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers in their rubber match of the season series tonight. Both teams did not enjoy the weekend at all, and both should be quite hungry to get back into the win column. It is going to be should be a great game, and it's going to be a great show. Lots to get to, including the return of Bones. We will hear from Rick Bowness, some really interesting comments from Nikolai Ehlers, which we'll play as well. We'll try and have time for some Josh Morrissey. Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press is back from the road trip. He was there to witness everything that happened in Jersey and Long Island. So we'll bring Mike in, and we'll also check in on the visiting Oil with handsome Tommy Gazzola, who will join us from Edmonton Sports Talk in hour 2 of the program. I know yesterday was a little, I don't want to say it was doom and gloom, but it did feel a little gloomy. I mean, that was the natural reaction to the end of that road trip after such a promising start with the win in Columbus and most notably that win against the New York Rangers. But we move into tonight. I have had a good sleep. I am ready to bring some positivity to it, and I can't wait for this game tonight. I mean, listen, it's always a treat to get a chance to see Connor McDavid, the number one player in the world. The Oilers come in with Leon Draisaitl, 50 goal scorer, Zach Hyman as well. But our focus is going to be on the home team and whether they can get back to playing the brand of hockey that made them one of the top teams in the National Hockey League, as opposed to one that didn't look anything of the sort on the second half of that road trip, certainly about those games in Jersey and Long Island. So we move on from the road. It is back at home, a 5-game homestand beginning tonight. Vegas Golden Knights on Thursday, and then what's actually going to be a big day on Saturday. It's Fan Appreciation Day, and I'll just let you know, there's going to do tons of prizes and giveaways. That's a Saturday game against the Ottawa Senators. All fans in attendance are going to have a chance to win a jersey right off the players' backs during a special post-game on-ice meet and greet. And most notably, 50% off all food and non-alcoholic beverages for the entire game. So for those of you that are looking for a good deal, and Winnipeggers love a good deal, get a ticket for Saturday for the Fan Appreciation Game. Although our focus will be for Saturday's game after the Knights come in on Thursday, and tonight it is all about the Edmonton Oilers. Listen, just before we bring in Michael Remis and get the latest news out of the morning skate, and there was a bunch. A big thanks to the sponsors that make our show happen each and every day. Great to have Consolidated Supply back on as we head into spring. Manitoba Battery, Modern Man Barbershop, big event at Modern Man, actually. A week this weekend. 1-year anniversary of the new Pembina store. We'll let you know about some special things going on there. Canadian Club, Little Brown Jug, the great people at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, the Winnipeg Jets, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, and very shortly we'll get to a Why Not question of the day for Non-Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, how are you? Where's your head at right now going into tonight's game? Did we get it all out yesterday?
Yeah, we got it all out. Yesterday was cathartic, Huss. We got it out. The teams come. They said the right things. Got me all fired up for Fan Appreciation Day. I went to one of those games one year. They had a Fan Appreciation game one year against Ottawa, who they were playing on Saturday, and that was the game Bufflin hit Mark Stone, and I don't think he's still fully recovered.
The hardest hit in the history of hockey?
Yeah, I don't think he's recovered since Mark Stone. So that's what I think of Fan Appreciation Day. I remember getting some good deals, so it is fun to go to those games and check it out. But yeah, big game tonight. My blood is already boiling, though, thinking about how many kid Oiler fans are going to be in the chat. I went to bed thinking, I'm like, who are these parents? I mean, I'm just thinking, like, if my kid grows up to wear an Oiler jersey at a Jets game, I will have failed as a parent. So I'm really hoping. Actually, at this point, I'd be happy if you wore any jersey to a game. But I don't know. We were there, and I couldn't believe. Like, we're looking around at all the Oiler fans cheering as the Oilers won at the WST night. And I was like, who are these kids here? Where are their parents? What's going on? So I'm looking forward to a great crowd. I mean, it's always fun.
You were quite bent about that. I did get a chuckle out of it.
Adult Oiler fans, I mean, I can get it, but who are these kid Oiler fans? What's going on here?
Schickster's working 116, 117 tonight. He said, I'm going to have tons of Oiler fans in the section for warm-up. Going to carry a big stick tonight. Make it happen, Schickster. Make it happen. In fact, tell them, no, you can't come down for the warm-up. This is a temporary rule just for today. Hey, listen, it should be a great atmosphere. I can tell you that. And you know, this is the rubber match of the season series, but the Jets haven't seen the Oilers in a long, long time, and I'd suggest that team is quite a bit different than it was even when we saw them last year in Winnipeg. I mean, the first game of the year between these two clubs was in Edmonton, just a couple Saturdays into the season. I was actually in attendance at that game at Edmonton. Ugly start for the Jets, down 2-0 early. And then really stepped it up, tied the game. I believe it was Josh Morrissey, if I recall correctly, winning it in overtime. It was a big 2 points, and that was a huge game because, you know, you can kind of compare some similarities from that point in the season till now. Obviously, there's way more of a body of work to talk about, but going into that game, both teams were under 500. Both teams were looking for, a little bit of positive momentum, and the Jets really got it in that game. The Oilers didn't. Now, the second matchup of the season, you mentioned that was the WST game. That was a weird game. I mean, when it came to what you think of for Winnipeg and Edmonton. I mean, that was a 1-0 game for Winnipeg with less than 5 minutes of the game. And that was when Darnell Nurse scored on that crazy knuckler on Connor Hellebuck to tie the game, and then boom, another one went in shortly after that. They got an empty netter, and I believe the final was 3-1. But, you know, traditionally these teams have played very, very tight games between each other. And, you know, even though there's a ton of scoring power on both teams, particularly Edmonton, the games have certainly trended towards the under. And I think that's exactly what the Winnipeg Jets would like to see tonight. This team needs to get back to defense first, what got them to that point, what got away from them on the weekend. And I think if they can do that, hopefully a few of your opportunities can go in. They'll give you a good chance to win. But, I mean, I was saying this to Dusty on the Lock Shop as we kind of went through this game from Edmonton and Winnipeg perspectives. Like, if the Jets can't be a much, much better and more responsible defensive team, this is the last team you want to be playing.
Yeah, I agree with that, Huss. But I do think, look, Edmonton gets in these games with some of their rivals. You see Edmonton, LA, it's always very tight checking, low scoring. We've seen it here with the Jets, so I'm on your side. But for it to be low scoring, the Jets have to play their game the way that we know that they can at 5-on-5. They certainly got away from that on this road trip against, well, I mean, did they even show up against the Islanders? Against the Devils, it was special teams. And the Capitals, it was a step in the right direction, but you're not going to win any games if you don't score goals. So, big task tonight, Josh Morrissey or whoever's going to be handling Connor McDavid. You also got 50-goal scorer Zach Hyman there with Edmonton as well. So a lot of weapons at Edmonton, but the Jets are going to have to be on. It doesn't just happen, right? Oh, it's a low-scoring game because it's two good teams. You do have to come to the rink to play, and I think the Jets, at least Morrissey, Bowness, and Ehlers today, they settled the right things about turning the page and having a positive homestand.
Well, it's great to talk the talk, but this team needs to walk the walk tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, before we get to a little more on tonight's game, did you watch any of those games last night?
I was. I'm reading the chat here.
Yes or no question.
So I was in a baseball draft, so I had on the LA. What's it called?
Vancouver
game. So I had
game.
it on in the background, but I was in a baseball draft, so I wasn't paying that close. I was surprised Vancouver lost. I thought they were going to clinch.
The reason I bring this up is that I went over and watched the. I made a point. I knew that the Vegas St. Louis game was not going to be on regular television, so I headed down the street to a spot where I could watch it, and threw that game on. And then obviously it overlapped with the Vancouver game, and we had a little lock shop action, and I'm pulling for St. Louis to win that game because of our wager. But I bring this up because the pace, the tenacity, the physicality of both of those games was so far from what we've seen as of late from the Winnipeg Jets. And I could not help but think, Remis, and I have no idea. I'm sure there's a few guys that'll pay attention to games on their off night. Coming back from a long road trip, I'm sure there was a lot of guys that had to do family things or spend time with that significant others. But I would have loved for every player on the Winnipeg Jets to watch that Vegas-St. Louis game and then pay attention to what was happening between the LA Kings and the Vancouver Canucks, because it honestly felt like it felt like playoff hockey. It looked like playoff hockey. It was physical. It was fast. And it looked very different than what we had seen over the last few games of the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, I mean, we can talk about what's happened. I mean, you hope that it is in some ways a wake-up call. And listen, when you get embarrassed or no-show, as Scott O'Neill mentioned, like a game like against the Islanders, you have to look within. But not only getting back to where that they have been earlier in the regular season, but I would argue that the next little bit, and particularly when it comes to the playoffs, regardless of who they're playing, we're talking about a whole nother level of intensity and commitment that is going to need to be made. And a lot of these other teams have made that switch. Now, Vegas and St. Louis right now are playing for their playoff lives. Vegas with the overtime win last night. By the way, a penalty shot in OT for Buchnevich, stopped by Logan Thompson, and then Marchessault goes down the other way, turns the puck over in the blue zone and scores for the winner. They find a way to win, but the games themselves were a brand of playoff hockey that the Jets are going to need to get to, and no better time like the present to play like your season is on the line, even though it is challenging at times for teams that have basically known they're going to be in the playoffs for a long time, waiting to see who they're playing at the end of 82. But it's time to ramp it up, and I would be saying that anyways, even if the road trip didn't end the way that it did.
Yeah, I think you're at home. We've seen them play well here, and you're here for an extended homestand. You don't have to worry about traveling around. You can stay focused on the game. I think that'll be a benefit. I mean, you look at the Jets' home record. Now, I think their record against the East have been pretty good, but at home, 23-9-2, very good. And look, you're playing some big opponents: Edmonton tonight, Vegas Thursday. You got Calgary, LA, and Ottawa's really the only team that's out of it. Actually, Calgary's out of it, but Ottawa, three of the five teams in the playoffs. So yeah, you're gonna have to bring the intensity. And I think the home crowd here is gonna be big. I imagine it's gonna be very busy tonight with Edmonton in town. Saturday, fan appreciation will be big. Thursday, Vegas. Thursday's not a weekend game, Huss, but it's just basically a weekend game with the long weekend. So again, I think there's gonna be packed crowds, and we've seen how they respond, and seen some big crowds lately as well too, especially on the weekend games, that Saturday game and a Friday game. Although again, it's bad Thursday has coming up this week against Vegas, biggest bar night of the year. Great scheduling by the NHL.
It always is good. Now, I'm just looking back at previous matchups, like the last head-to-head matchups between the Jets and the Oilers, and I heard Jeff Merrick today say the Jets were 12-4 in their last 16 matchups, and that didn't entirely seem almost possible. We kind of talked about the split in the two games this year. The Jets did win. I guess that would have been a preseason game. Oh, these are preseason. Last year, 7-5 at home for the Jets. 6-3, the Jets won at home. New Year's Eve of last year, the Jets won in Edmonton 2-1. Earlier that year, maybe this was to start off the season, October 1st was 3-2. That could be. It doesn't specify whether these are exhibition games or not. Obviously, the September games are. And we all remember the 4-game sweep in the playoffs that no one could attend. That would be legendary in these parts if there was actually fans attending, but kind of gets lost. I mean, the Jets have played tight games against Edmonton, and they haven't a lot of times brought their best. But this is a different Edmonton team right now. I mean, obviously, since the coaching change, Knobloch has, done a pretty darn good job of getting the Edmonton Oilers to do a lot of the things that I think the Jets did earlier on this season. A little bit more attention to detail and a little bit more in their own zone, because the last thing the Edmonton Oilers need to worry about is goals or offensive creativity. And I know BA was saying in chat, this is about scoring goals. No, it's not at all. The goals will come for Winnipeg if they play the style that they've had before. They can score on the rush. They'll spend enough time in the O-zone. They'll cycle the puck. But the focus, I mean, we all know what the focus needs to be. And when we look back at that 4-game sweep, they were relatively lower scoring games. They did a great job of, not neutralizing Connor McDavid, because that's impossible, but doing a very good job at minimizing his impact. And I'll tell you what, if you play good defensively and have the puck more often than not, you'll have a chance to help your own goaltender out with giving him a little bit of a break and put things back on the other end.
I'll never forget the beginning of the season, Hess. We were shoveling dirt on the grave of the Edmonton Oilers before they went for the coaching change. We thought they're done.
Full Undertaker
They
move.
can't come out. I mean, Tom Gazzola does the postgame show. They had record crowds. Beyond belief, this was supposed to be a Stanley Cup, contending team. They were doing terrible. And then, they go on this 16-game winning streak. It's almost like regression is a real thing. And all of a sudden, they're back. And I don't know if they can catch Vancouver, but firmly in a playoff spot, no doubt. They did make some trades at the deadline. Edmonton, Adam Henrique and Carrick were the big ones for them. Corey Perry they signed as well, but McDavid is the straw that stirs their drink, and he's going to be with Nugent Hopkins and Zach Hyman. They've kind of experimented putting Draisaitl up there too a little bit lately, but I think he's best on the second line, gives them a more balanced attack with the lethal power play. I don't know if Edmonton is deep enough to win a Stanley Cup, but they're certainly a very good team, and looking forward to seeing them tonight. And one guy for them, wasn't a trade deadline acquisition this year, but last year, Matthias Ekholm. That's been a perfect fit for them on the top line with Evan Bouchard, who's emerged as one of the top scoring defensemen in the league this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so listen, just before we get to Bones, here's the big news this morning. In addition to the return of Rick Bowness, who's back on the bench and will be back on the bench tonight, is the return of Gabriel Vilardi. Now, Vilardi will not play today, but he was on the ice. He didn't take part in line rushes, and we'll hear from Rick Bowness in a minute. There's no timetable for Vilardi's return. He needs to be on the ice as he makes his way back. He'll be taking morning skates. He'll be practicing. He'll be doing extra work. Here it is. This is just from John Liu. Bowness said Vilardi's taking part in morning skates and practices with teammates. His return to action will depend on his conditioning level as the coaching staff pushes him now that his upper body injury has healed and his spleen is normal again. So while we won't see Vilardi in the lineup tonight, Remo, that's about as good news as anyone could have expected. An imminent return after he gets his legs back and a little conditioning after missing the last little while. There was obviously a lot of concern that this might be a long-term injury, and they were just crossing their fingers they'd have him for the playoffs.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that he was on the ice today in a regular jersey, because when you have a spleen injury, very risky to be on the receiving end of contact. So I thought this was something where, if he was going to be ready at all, it would be the day before the playoffs, and then he'd suit up. But to have him skating, have him saying, "Oh yeah, his spleen is fine. It's just a conditioning issue now." They're trying to ramp that up before they get him into game action. Very, very positive. So I was happy to hear that because the spleen could be a long-term thing, and it was only like a month ago. He's only been out for like a month now. So it was great news to hear from the head coach, and also seeing the head coach back at the podium today as well.
Yeah, and we'll hear from Bones in a minute. Here are the lines for tonight, and I'll touch on this in a second. Connor, Scheifele, Iafallo, Ehlers, Monahan, Toffoli, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, Barron, Nemetsnikov, Perfetti. Basically, where the team was in the game against the Rangers and where for the majority of the lines, the way they've looked, certainly the third line, the second line over the last little while, now with Velarde out, Iafallo in. I did say yesterday I would have loved if they went into this game with Ehlers on Scheifele's line to see how that looked. Kyle Connor playing with Monahan and Toffoli. That won't be the case. Obviously, at any point they can make that switch, but unfortunately those switches often happen when things are going very poorly and they sort of feel pushed into it. But Bones is back to that. What is interesting, Remis, is that Logan Stanley's in, and he's in for Dylan Samberg tonight. The defense pairings, Morrissey, DeMello, Dylan Pionk, and Stanley and Schmidt. And listen, I'm all here for, if you want to get these guys some games as we get closer to the end of the season, do it. I was very surprised that Logan Stanley happens to be in against the Edmonton Oilers. Not sure whether he did enough in those games against the Ducks and Blue Jackets to really give them some added confidence that wasn't there before. But I was not expecting that when we got the news from Line Rushes today. Big challenge for Stan to hold his own against an Oiler team that can make you look pretty bad if you're not ready to go.
I was surprised to see Dylan Samberg rotated out for this one. They didn't really touch on that in the availability, but he's been one of their top defensemen all year. Huss, I know he plays third pair, but I think he's been solid, and he's done the job that's been asked of him. I thought last week
he certainly had a rough road trip. Like, I'm not sugarcoating that. There was some ugly moments, but he had a lot of company.
Like, is he a regular in the lineup? Like this, I don't know if this is like a playoff game, but this is a big game against a team that you're going to be competing with. It's probably not facing them in the playoffs, maybe not till later, but this is a big game and you need to get a win. Like, if Samberg is going to be in your day one playoff lineup, like, I would think you would want him in on this game. Maybe he's banged up and we don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe, they want Logan Stanley's 6'7" frame here against the Edmonton Oilers, and they think he's going to push Edmonton around. I'm just trying to think of what the reasoning could be, as it wasn't addressed. But I think Samberg, he's in the lineup for me, so I'm not sure why he would get rotated out on this one.
Listen, it was a bit of an eye opener, if you will, and of course Hellebuck in net tonight. I wasn't sure, considering he got yanked and then played again on Wednesday against the Caps. I wasn't sure if maybe LB would get this start. I still think LB was originally scheduled to go in the game against the Sens, so I guess that probably means Hellebuck the next two. But obviously we'll see how that moves going forward. I do see some thoughts on the PK. Yes, the PK needs to step it up. I felt for them. This has happened a few times where they've gotten right down to the end and then been scored in the final 10 seconds. I think the goal that really turned the Capitals game around was 4 seconds left on the PK. But being disciplined and not giving this Oilers power play, plenty of opportunities, has to be at the top of the list. Team discipline will certainly help the Winnipeg Jets as it pertains to tonight. So listen, we're going to get to Rick Bowness. Also, Nikolai Ehlers had some really good stuff. We'll hopefully get some time for Josh Morrissey. But just a quick thanks to sponsors, and we will come back with Rick Bowness back in front of the mic and back on the bench for tonight's game between the Oilers and Jets. Well, spring is just about here, gang, and our friends at Consolidated Supply are ready for a very busy spring and summer and the change of the seasons. You know, the gang at Consolidated Supply are the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, and of course, golf carts in Manitoba is the official club car dealer with incredible new and used options for you in regards to golf carts. They've also got other amazing options for your property, including hot tubs and incredible outdoor kitchens. And of course, they're also the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Consolidated Supply has so much waiting for you. Come on down and see them at their beautiful showroom, open to the public at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out everything Consolidated Supply can do for you online at cte.ca. Our friends at Manitoba Battery are enjoying the beauty of their new location over on Dovercourt Road. It is officially open, and Donnie and his staff welcome you down at the original location at 1026 Logan, but at the new spot at 452 Dovercourt Drive. And as part of the grand opening celebrations, any battery that's normally $60 or more will save you an extra $10 if you pick it up in store. But of course, you know Manitoba Battery is your local option with the best prices on batteries of all makes, models, shapes, sizes, whatever you need, beating the pants off the big box stores. And of course, they will deliver to you for free any battery purchase inside the perimeter of Winnipeg over $60. It's just that easy. So head on over to manitobabattery.com or pop by and visit the fellas at the new location, 452 Dovercourt Drive, and of course the original spot at 1026 Logan Avenue. Guys, if you need to get a fresh new look as we head into spring, you know where to do that. Get on over to one of the 8 Modern Man barbershops conveniently located throughout the city of Winnipeg, including their 2 newest standalone locations on Pembina Highway or on Plessis Road. Modern Man barbershops offer a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. The easiest way to make an appointment and book your look is at modernmanbarber.com. Make sure to give them a follow on Instagram as well at Modern Man Barbershops. And we'd also have a huge thank you to the great people at Canadian Club for their continued support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is the official spirit of the blue and gold. We'll be counting down the days till we're enjoying CC's at the Rum Hut and the Jim Beam Social House and CC's and Gingers at the stands at Princess Auto Stadium. But while we wait for football to return, you'll always get the great taste of Canadian Club and all their amazing products at your local Manitoba liquor marts. Pop by today and check out the Canadian Club display. And remember, always enjoy responsibly. All right, we're going to get into some Rick Bowness here. Bones back the bench. And who was it that just made this cut? Luke Whip, 442. Remember the last time Bowness came back? Won 3-0 against Florida. Maybe we'll beat the Oilers in a similar way. I hope. Anyways, Luke, that is the sort of positivity we're appreciating today. We're past yesterday in this road trip. All systems go on this 5-game homestand beginning tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. Which brings me, just before we get to Bones, let's get to the why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Where this is more a vibe check, if you will. Fans, everyone that's with us in YouTube right now, how are you feeling going into this game tonight, knowing what the Jets have accomplished so far, the job at hand, but also knowing you're playing an ornery Oiler team that just came out of a very disappointing weekend when they found themselves down 5-0 at one point Saturday night to the Leafs and then blew a 3-1 lead to the Ottawa Senators and lost as well. Let us know how you're feeling in the chat and your expectations for the team tonight. Back to the coach, though. It was great to see Rick back after being on the mend for a few days. First things first, Bones, how are you feeling? And what was it like having to watch the end of the road trip from home?
Doing much better, thank you. Yeah. So we had to deal with a couple little things. It's just the body reminding me I'm 69 and not 39.
You look good, Bones.
Yeah, so do you, Lou. Thanks, you pal. I was looking for you. You finally show up. I think you knew you weren't going to miss anything early.
Did your age maybe go up a little bit over those last 3 games on the road? How difficult is it, Rick, to be in that?
It's difficult. I hate sitting there watching. You're not in the fight with them. It's what we all sign up for, to be in the fight. And when you see your team not playing as well as you know it's capable of, it's frustrating. And you see how we were Tuesday in New York, and then how we in New Jersey. Like, where did it go, right? So that's what gets frustrating when you know you're watching a team. Tuesday night I'm watching there with Judy and we say, geez, we got a good team here, right? And you're saying, where did it go? So that's frustrating.
Reem, and I know we talked about this quite a bit off air over the course of the weekend, but I mean, I spent a lot of Saturday after that Islander fiasco just wondering. I mean, I didn't know what Bones was dealing with, but that's the sort of performance by a team that could give you an ulcer or something like that on top of whatever you were dealing with. I mean, it was great to see him in good spirits, but that, honestly, I'm glad Kelly asked that question, Kelly Moore of OB, because that must have been excruciating to watch what happened to his team on the second half of that road trip, considering he was back in Winnipeg.
Yeah, he mentioned he was 69. There were some jokes that watching those games at home over the weekend added a couple years onto his life. So he's looking pretty good, Huss, Rick Bowness. But yeah, I can't imagine it. I imagine it must have been tough for him at home, a guy who's so fiery, so competitive, not being there while your team is getting their teeth kicked in.
I just think about every conversation I had with Jet fans over the weekend, and just was wondering what it must have been like around the Bowness household. Here's Bones on just addressing the team after what happened out east.
No, we had a good talk with the group this morning. It's not fair to me go in there this morning and make all these negative comments and accusations. I'm not in the fight with them for those 4 games, right? So I gave them some observations. So sitting back in my chair watching the game Winnipeg, this is what I saw. So we talk about those things, and it's all tied into our overall team play for the last little while. Hasn't been up to snuff on a consistent basis. So we've been dealing with that.
All right, so there's Bones. I mean, listen, it's no different than what we've been talking about here with you all over Winnipeg Sports Talk. I mean, that consistency of the level of play and style of play that, got them to the point that they've been in for the majority of the season just wasn't there. And that certainly, I think, has left the players frustrated. This is an interesting little back and forth with Bones and Paul Friesen on that topic.
Listen, the players are frustrated too. They know we're better than we've shown, so that's all part of it.
So how do you account for those wild swings?
Yeah, that's what we talked about this morning.
Yeah.
No, I know what's wrong, and we're going to keep addressing it.
Is it possible that complacency sets in quickly, or?
There's absolutely no way this team should be complacent. We haven't done anything yet. Yeah. So I think that's part of the message as well. So, no, there's absolutely nothing, and we're still fighting. We're still in a fight, and the other teams are desperate. Yeah, well, so are we. So we have to play that way.
What's wrong with the notion of just, in 11 games we can flip the switch?
There was a whole lot wrong with that. What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
There's a lot wrong with that. You want to have good habits going into the playoffs. You want to be playing really well. And we're not just talking about the outcome of the game. We're talking about the compete and the process and everything else. So there's no way we're just going to walk through these next 11 games. We still have a lot to fight for. I don't see an X by our name in a playoff spot. So, and we're still pushing. So there's just no way I'm not taking the foot off the gas.
All right, there's a little more from Bones, and he also was asked and talked about the team's mindset going into a game like this against a very good team in the Edmonton Oilers that provides some unique challenges after bottoming out, frankly, in their last game not as much, but the previous two.
They know. They're frustrated too. Listen, every team in the league goes through a busy part of the schedule. We had a busy schedule. So what? Everyone goes through it. Find a way. Just find a way to get through it. Better than we looked last week. So the game in Washington was better. We had enough chances to win that game and give the goalie credit. So that's a step in the right direction. Could we have still played better in Washington? Yeah, we could have. And we're going to have to get right on top of every little detail from here on out, which we've been trying to do. So we're going to keep pushing.
Keep pushing is right. Now, if you missed yesterday's show, we had a real fun chat with Sean Reynolds of Kenny and Rennie fame. Rennie, of course, was there. And Rennie had some good questions here for Bones. And this is just on the team getting away from that defensive structure that was a major topic on yesterday's WST.
Well, so we had that great stretch, and that's why we're winning games. We won 26 of those 34 games, and that's how we're going to continue to win games. So we have to play defense first. Now, it's hard to get that commitment to defense. Is hard work. It's sacrifice, and it's every night, and it's every shift, and it's hard to get them to play 82 games that way. So there's been a couple of games that we've slipped away. We've always found a way to get back at it, but it's those slips that the last couple of games. Where are they coming from? Why are they coming in here? So, but the important thing from a coaching perspective is you identify it and you address it like right away. It's not like we let things slide. We don't. We're good or bad. We're going to address it regardless of the outcome. So, it's slipped a little bit. Probably I don't know, last 6 weeks. It goes good, then it goes away, and then we don't look very good. Then we get it back. So the consistency is the hardest thing for us to get. But that again, defense is hard work. There's no shortcuts, and structure is hard work, and getting ready to do it every night. That's the hard part, is getting mentally ready to do that every night. So we're pushing. That's what we're talking about this morning, and that's what we're going to keep pushing.
Very clear message from the head coach back on the bench. And here's Bones just expanding a little bit more and giving reasons why, the team has sort of gotten away from it.
Well, there's a number of things, but yeah, sometimes the most important thing, again, it goes back to how did you play the game? Did you play the game the right way, the whole way, regardless of the outcome of the game? Some like even, so we beat Anaheim 6-1 and we beat Columbus 6-1. There's things in those games we had to do better. Because if you don't address them, all of a sudden it slips in and it slides. So all we can do every game is identify, okay, this is an area we have to get better at, regardless of the outcome. Because it's all part of the process, right? But the process doesn't work if the other team is going to outwork you. It doesn't. The structure doesn't work if the other team is going to outwork you. So you can talk about details and structure and all these process. You can talk all you want. But if the other team is out there just a little bit hungrier than you are, then that stuff goes away. So it's important now that we get that intensity back up and that we're not outworked and that we're not outcompeted. Then everything else will take care of itself.
So then heading into tonight's game, which is just one game, you can only focus on a few certain things, then is a will and effort and work ethic. Is that maybe first and foremost?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
That was really interesting. And part of the reason why I brought up those two games that I watched last night, that is exactly what we saw from the Blues playing for their playoff lives, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Kings and the Canucks in a real hard-fought battle. I mean, that will, the intensity, and not being outworked by the other team. And that's why those games were so competitive. And that is the level you need to play at right now, ramping up for what is going to be a wide open and amazing Stanley Cup playoff tournament. Just one more clip or a couple we'll put together for Bones. That was more about the road trip, where they go from here, what needs to change. The most welcome change was Gabriel Vilardi back on the ice in the regular jersey. He will not play tonight, but Bones had a bit of an update on Vilardi and where he's at and when we might see him.
Yeah, we haven't seen him for a while. He didn't come on the road trip with us, but I was out there early with him, and he's skating around, and he looks good. Now we need to take him every day and get our coaches pushing him and find out where he is, conditioning-wise, and playing through any discomfort. But we won't know those things until we get him on the ice like today and push him and keep pushing him and see where he is.
Rick, just to follow up on Gabriel's condition, I'm assuming that because he's on the ice, his spleen is back to normal then?
Yes, Yeah. And now we have to push them to see how much discomfort there's going to be when we really push them. It's one thing to be working on your own and everything else, but now you get one of our coaches pushing in. We know how far we can push them. We got to find out.
Sorry, pushing him individually, like just
Yeah,
solo
because
work,
we
or-
don't have any practice time, so it's getting them out there like today and putting them through a bunch of different skating drills and shooting drills and see where his comfort level is and see where his conditioning level is.
Yeah. So would he return to normal skates or morning skates and the rare practice anytime soon?
He'll stay out with us every day now. He'll skate with us every day.
All right, so ramping up Velarde to get back in the lineup. That was some great news from this morning. We had Rennie on, who has self-glossed himself as the truth teller. There's certainly some truth tellers in the Jet dressing room. Brendan Dillon was quite the truth teller after the Jersey game. But, for my money, especially at times like these, one of the guys that gives the most blunt, honest answers and assessments of where the team is Nikolai Ehlers. He spoke before the game this morning and talked about the upcoming homestand.
We need to play better. Call it whatever you want. We're not happy with our last road trip. You lose a game and you play the right way, you can deal with that. But you lose games and you're not playing the right way and not playing for the logo on your jersey. You want to correct that. And that's what we're planning on doing on this homestand.
All right. Ehlers continued, talked about the importance of getting back to their game, something we heard quite a few times from the head coach earlier.
Super important. Like I said, it was something that was creeping in, and we couldn't get a handle of it. And now we've lost 3 in a row again, and it's not feeling really good. So what we can fix tonight is go out there and play for each other, work hard, outwork Edmonton, and play the right way. So that's what we're planning on doing.
Pretty clear task for the players from their head coach today, and certainly you heard that echoed by number 27 there. Ehlers expanded on what he meant by bad parts of their game creeping in.
Well, you look at the way that we played during the great stretch that we had of 30 games, and obviously playing 82 games that way is going to be hard. But when you get so far away from that game and you're not playing the right way anymore and you're not outworking the other team like we did in that stretch, then it's all going to fall together at some point. And we just weren't able to correct it in time, and we got 11 games now to change the way that we want to play and the way that we want to get ready for the playoffs.
Nikolai Ehlers of the Winnipeg Jets from this morning. Ehlers also talked about the Jets' 5-on-5 game this morning.
Yeah, our 5-on-5 game has been very different from when we had the good stretch. The special teams, you want to get that going too, but overall you want your 5-on-5 game to be right, and we know what we're able to do when we play the right way and when we play well. So it's not as easy as just saying, hey, let's play like we did during that 30-game stretch. It's harder than that, but we want to find a way to get back to that game because we were a pretty good team back then. So, but the least we can do right now is go out and work our asses off and play for each other. And this group in here is excited to go out and do that.
Gotta say, love what I'm hearing from Ehlers. And listen, he's echoing what the coach had to say. You cannot get outworked in the National Hockey League and expect to win games. That might happen a few times, but that is no recipe for continued success. And they know that, and they've done it before, and they got to get back to that tonight. One more from Ehlers, and this, of course, is the return of the man we just heard speaking, Rick Bowness. Happy to have their coach back on the bench.
It's huge. I mean, he's our head coach. I think our coaching staff and the whole organization has been really great this year with, certain situations that we've had to overcome. Everybody's just tried to dig in and do our best. But you want everyone together. We come back and we got Gabe out here skating again today, and it lifts your mood a little bit, seeing these guys come back. So it's exciting.
All right, so there's Ehlers and Bones. We've got Josh Morrissey. We'll try and get that in a little bit later on. But coming up in just a moment, we're going to bring in Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, to break it all down. I want to extend a huge thanks to the great people at Princess Auto for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto, proudly founded right here in Winnipeg and committed to Winnipeg with their headquarters, national headquarters right here, not only supporting Winnipeg Sports Talk, but all of our local teams, including the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as they welcome fans to Princess Auto Stadium this year to cheer on the blue and gold down at the U of M. Princess Auto, of course, is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most incredible and unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them in store on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. We also want to thank the folks at Wallace & Wallace. Speaking of getting ready for spring, Wallace & Wallace are the fencing and overhead door specialist. You'll see their fences and trucks all over the city. And for all of your fencing needs, Wallace & Wallace has you covered. What you might not know is that they're also the overhead door specialist in Winnipeg, with the largest selection in Manitoba as the Clopay dealer here in town. They can also help you, though, with your maintenance, with the crazy weather, getting cold, getting warm again. This is the time to prevent downtime going into the new seasons. Give Wallace & Wallace a call to book your maintenance and inspection service call today for residential and commercial overhead door sales and service. There's only one name or two you need to know. That is Wallace & Wallace. And speaking of the change of the seasons, fellas, I think a lot of you may be looking into the closet and realize it might be time to up that menswear game. Well, whether you need a suit for a particular event or just want to upgrade your workwear and more, F Apparel is the spot. Just an incredible selection of custom menswear waiting for you, starting with suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an amazing selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married or in a wedding party coming up this summer, make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a 15% discount when the entire wedding party gets your suits at F Apparel. They've also got great deals for high school grads as well, so make sure to talk to the guys at F about that. Pop by and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can also find out more online or make an appointment at F. That's EPHapparel.com. And as we look ahead to spring and summer, I am counting down the days to fishing season. And on Winnipeg Sports, when we're talking fishing, we're getting fired up to head back to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. A one-of-a-kind, incredible fly-in fishing experience right here in Manitoba, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. And as incredible as the world-class fishing is that awaits guests at Aikens Lake, the hospitality of the Aikens team and the Terren family is even better. Head on over to aikenslake.com, find out more about everything available at Aikens coming up, and you can contact them as well about pricing and availability options and booking dates for the 2024 fishing season. aikenslake.com online, and make sure to check them out on all their social channels at Aikens Lake. All right, shout out to our friends at Aikens. Hey, by the way, you've got any young fishing enthusiasts out there in the audience or in the family for you listeners? Aiken's looking for a couple of fishing guides for the upcoming year, and having been a veteran of the Aiken's experience, that looks like the greatest job a young fishing nut could possibly have. Find out more online at aikenslake.ca and throw in a resume. And I'll remind you that a spot is opened up for Father's Day weekend. They're booking well into July and August right now. Normally, that's a time that's booked way in advance. There's been a change. So if you're thinking about a great father-son trip or maybe a family trip, talk to them about an opening for Father's Day weekend out at Aikens Lake. Let's bring Mike McIntyre in from the Winnipeg Free Press. And Mike, listen, we got it out yesterday. We're moving on to tonight in Edmonton. However, you were on the road for that entire trip. And I guess it is good to remind people that as ugly as a couple of those games were, you really saw the highs and the lows of the Winnipeg Jets over the course of your trip when you weren't watching Back to the Future on Broadway and all the other fun stuff you did.
Now that, I mean, the game in Madison Square Garden last Tuesday, that was a pretty good hockey game. Back to the Future the next night. And then went and saw Book of Mormon on Friday as well on Broadway. And then yesterday, Huss, well, Jets fans were having a therapy session on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I was playing the role of tourist in Washington. I booked a late flight home last night, got to go see the cherry blossoms, which were unbelievable. Yeah, there's the that's the Smithsonian. There's the Washington Monument. That is the U.S. Capitol. Just playing that.
You didn't storm it, did you?
I did not storm the Cap. And there's the highlight. So this is, I think, my fourth time I've been to Washington on a Jets trip. It's never timed out to be there for cherry blossom season. And I guess thanks to global warming or whatever, the blossoms, as you can see, they're in full bloom early. And my goodness, was it ever magnificent to take in the blossoms. They're everywhere.
It's hilarious that you mentioned that. In my entire life, I've never even heard anybody talking about cherry blossoms. And I don't know, maybe I stumbled on something into the algorithm or something online, but I have been inundated with cherry blossom stuff, and now I'm getting it from you too. Well, it looks extravagant. It looks lovely.
By the way, I could be a photographer, couldn't I? Look at those pictures.
Solid. You're a multimedia journalist. Isn't that what all you guys are now?
That's an iPhone 12.
But hey, listen, just as far as the I mean, because again, I don't want to spend too much time on the road trip, but I mean, we're only a week removed from one of the best games this team had played on the road, and then literally a complete 180 for a couple. I mean, you were there the whole time. I mean, now that you're back at home, like, what are your takeaways from the entire body of work over those 5 games that ended up 2-3?
Funny to hear Rick Bowness probably express what a lot of Jets fans are thinking this morning, where he said, he turned to Judy, his wife, and said, "What happened? Like, where did that Ranger game go?"
He's one of us.
He is indeed. Look, I mean, the Jets just ran into 3 straight desperate opponents. The Rangers were not a desperate. The Rangers are an elite opponent, but not a desperate opponent. And I know a lot of fans, they may disagree with me after 3 straight losses. I would say the Jets are an elite opponent when they play other teams. And that's how other teams view the Jets. I mean, I heard it in Jersey, I heard it on Long Island, and I heard it in Washington. Go back and look. All 3 of those coaches, they were singing the praise of the Jets. They knew that they had to bring their A game and then some if they were going to have a chance, is they talked the Jets up as an elite opponent. And, the Jets just couldn't match the urgency, the desperation. Is it excusable? I mean, no, the Jets needed to be a lot better, and they weren't. They couldn't answer the challenge. Is it a little bit understandable? Sure. I mean, this is a team that, again, has played a lot of hockey. I think if you add in the games over the weekend, that was number 12 and 13 over days 23 and 24. That's a lot of hockey, 13 and 24. We know, and again, I'm not here to offer excuses for the team. I'm just giving you my thoughts on what's going on. They had a flu bug that went through the team earlier in the month, sapped them of some energy. They've had, I think 9 of those 13 Huss, if I recall my numbers correctly, I think 9 of 13 have been on the road. They were on the East Coast to start the month. They quickly came home. Then they were on the West Coast. Then they quickly came home. Then they were back on the East Coast. It's not been an easy schedule. The Jets have, I think they're 7-6 in those 13. They were 7-3 after that big win on Broadway last week, and now they've lost 3 in a row. Not great, but maybe not as terrible, not sky is falling kind of stuff that I know some folks are making out to be. Now, the problem for the Jets is the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars, they haven't run into the same bumps that the Jets have here recently, and they are now threatening to leave the Jets in the dust in the Central Division, and suddenly what looked like a 3-way race for first, and I guess at the very least second, and home ice advantage, all of a sudden the Jets with just 11 games left, they're now looking at potentially starting the playoffs on the road. So I would suggest, Huss, that starting tonight, and maybe it should have started earlier than tonight, maybe it should have been Sunday, and I'll give the Jets a bit of credit. I thought they were significantly better Sunday than Saturday. But starting tonight, the Jets now need to be playing with the desperation that we've seen in their opponents. One of the problems for the Jets, though, Huss, is a lot of the things that I've just said about the Jets, you could also say about the Edmonton Oilers, who just had a miserable weekend in Ontario. They're surly. They're going to be a little desperate here. They're trying to, they're battling for home ice advantage in that first round as well. It should make for a pretty good matchup tonight. And I am expecting a response from the Jets. Am I expecting a win? I won't go that far. I mean, it's a tough opponent and things happen in hockey. That being said, I'd be surprised if we don't see a really good effort from the Winnipeg Jets tonight, given the circumstances and the stakes.
Well, and it brings us back to, we were just listening to Bones and Nikolai Ehlers. And I mean, Bones didn't want to get too much into it because his guess, he said, hey, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the fight with the team.
Right.
But very clearly, when you're getting significantly outworked by your opponent in the National Hockey League, you're not winning the game. And that message certainly was heard from Nikolai Ehlers when he spoke, who, especially at times like these, seems to be as well thought but blunt and honest of a player as the Winnipeg Jets have in their dressing room, saying they need to get back to working their asses off. And I think they felt they kind of let off that a little bit. And, unfortunately, they kind of got embarrassed for it.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, the New Jersey game, okay. I mean, they were coming off a high of the Rangers. They weren't very good. To me, the Islander game that's the alarming one because, Brendan Dillon, I know you discussed this on the show last week. Like he kind of called his teammates out after that Jersey game when he spoke to me at the Prudential Center. And granted, that was a special teams loss where the Jets.
Well, you can call it a special teams loss.
Right.
The goals happened to take place on the power play, but it wasn't like they were dominating the game and playing great at 5-on-5. I mean, they were getting done. And Mike, I got to tell you, I mean, we play, and watch every one of these interviews. That one stood out. Like, I appreciated Brendan Dillon's honesty afterwards. That was as pissed off a player I think we've seen in front of a microphone. I mean, like we said to people that were listening on the podcast, to really get the full feeling of this interview, you kind of need to get to the YouTube and watch him. You were there. I mean,
yeah.
That was not your normal post-game one-on-one with a player.
No, it was not. And, I think there was some personal frustration there too. That the first power play goal against came after Brendan Dillon had got injured on a shot block, and then the Jets take a too many men trying to help him kind of off the ice, and Dylan Samberg gets blasted with a shot. But you're right. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think the Jets have that accountability now in spades. You mentioned Dillon, certainly Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, it comes from all over this lineup. They're not out here trying to paint this as something that it isn't. So they recognize that they haven't been nearly good enough, that they compete. Certainly the execution on Sunday against the Capitals, where, I thought the compete was a lot better. Unfortunately, Charlie Lindgren for them had other plans. But yeah, I mean, they recognize where they are. And that's why, to me, it'll be really interesting to see what this team looks like tonight. Because I'm expecting a response, given that they've been saying all the right things. We know this group has it in them. We've seen it. We've seen it countless times this year, including just 7 days ago. So it's not like we're on a prolonged run of where is that A game? Where has it gone? It was just there a week ago. So we know they're capable of it. Let's see what they can bring tonight. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I certainly appreciate, being on the road and being able to chat at times one-on-one with these players. The candor at times has been refreshing from this group. And I think it speaks to the leadership group, not just the guys wearing the letters, guys like Dylan and Ehlers who don't wear letters, but certainly, carry themselves as leaders in a lot of different ways. Huss, one of the storylines looking at the weekend, and I don't know about you, I must admit I'm a little perplexed at how the Jets are putting the lines together for their game tonight. I would have loved to have seen a little more runway with how they started Sunday's game, which happened
to be... agree more.
Yeah, it's how they ended Saturday's game. Now, granted, the Islanders had backed way off. They were up 6-1. But the Jets outscored the Islanders 2-0, outshot them 17-3 in that third period. They start the game Sunday with those lines. They played a tremendous first period and a half with those 4 forward lines. And if not for Lindgren and some, a little more puck luck, they might have been up a couple goals. Then for reasons that I don't understand, and Huss, you probably heard my chat with Mason Appleton the other day. I don't think he fully understood it either. In fact, he brought it up to me unsolicited, how they shuffled the lines later in the second period the other day in a 0-0 game. And, then Mason Appleton almost caught himself, because I think he was maybe going somewhere he didn't really want to go. But I'll go there for him. Why? It wasn't broken. Why did they try and fix it? I like the balance that they had. I liked Nemestikov. So for people listening who can't remember what the lines were, Appleton was with Ehlers and Scheifele. Appleton scored a nice goal from Ehlers in Saturday's third period. They had a couple of really good chances early in the game Sunday. You had Nemestikov up with Connor and Monahan. And Huss, I've been pounding the table wanting to see Connor and Monahan together a little bit. Now you had it, and you had a worker bee like Nemestikov that I thought was doing all kinds of great things with those two. You had Toffoli with Lowry and Niederreiter, and I absolutely love that because I think it brings more punch. It gives you 3 potential scoring lines, not just 2. And then you had Perfetti, Barron, and Iafallo, which, I mean, Perfetti scores the goal in the third on Saturday. I thought that was a very good fourth line. Why they're now going back to the tried and true, and if you look at recently, the not very good alignment that they've had is puzzling, to say the least. And it's right up there with why they're taking Dylan Samberg out of the lineup tonight. Huss, color me confused on that one as well.
Yeah, we can get to that one in a minute. I mean, as far as the lines go, I said the same as much yesterday on the program. I mean, listen, Kyle Connor is not coming out of the lineup, and he's not coming out of the top 6 either. But, and listen, the guy is a brilliant goal scorer and does a lot of great things for this team. And obviously, Mark Scheifele really likes playing with him. But when you looked at that game in New York, at one point, Scheifele, Connor, and Pionk were all -4. And we're playing some like Pionk just had a horrible game, but Chaos. Connor was so he just looked disinterested. He looked, I mean, just not engaged at all. And listen, I love the move that Arnie made, and I think that was more than necessary, and at times in that game overdue. But there is an element of, you want to be on that top line. You got to play a certain way. Mark Scheifele is going to be there. And listen, I'm going to give Nikolai Ehlers some credit. And we've seen this before. When the team is really at a low, he is a guy that I think you can pretty much consistently count on stepping up and trying to do everything he can to pull his team out of it. And I can't say that about a lot of guys on the team. And this was an opportunity, I think, to maybe see that connection a little bit longer, and see maybe if there is something with 81 and Monahan. Because I'll tell you what, if things go badly for a couple games in the playoffs, you know what's going to happen. I mean, they'll, in case of emergency, break glass. They'll go to some looks that we haven't seen before, and it's going to be one of those, well, hopefully this works. I've got a lot of time for Ehlers, the way he played when the team was struggling, what he was trying to do, and I'm with you. I think there would have definitely been some benefits to keeping it there. You can always go back if things aren't working or things aren't going well. But I guess, part of it probably has to do with the fact that those games were coached by other people. Bones is back. This is the way that he's setting up. Yeah. And of course, they are planning on getting Vilardi back. And I think we all know where Vilardi's going to sit in and where Rick Bowness's preferred top line is when Vilardi's there, and it involves Scheifele and Kyle Connor. But I echo your statements. And as far as the Appleton swap, the one thing I'll say about that, listen, I thought Appleton was playing well. He was skating. He was doing everything that he could do and had a couple of good chances earlier on in the game. But that initial swap of he and Toffoli, I thought made a lot of sense. I thought Toffoli was better. He looked like he had a 25-pound weight in his pants in the game against the Islanders. But you know what? Ehlers, while Vilardi's out, Ehlers, Scheifele, Toffoli, is a lineup that at least on paper has a little bit more spark. Now, you still got to be able to go and get that puck, and that's something that Appleton does very well, forechecking and all that. I didn't mind that swap, and you knew when they were trailing in the game in the third period, Kyle Connor was going to be up in that spot. But setting things up going into this game tonight, Ehlers has also been a guy that's had strong performances against the Edmonton Oilers. So I had time for it, but we will not see that. And I think, unfortunately, the next time we actually do see something like that, it's going to be because things are not going well and the team's still behind, and it is from there. But Dylan Sandberg, listen, he was not good on the road trip. Certainly in the last few games, he had plenty of company. It does seem like, and listen, I got a lot of time for the way Stanley played in his previous two games, albeit against the Ducks and Blue Jackets. But holy smokes, for a guy that hasn't played a lot, coming in against the Edmonton Oilers, this is excuse the pun, but a tall task for Logan. Coming right back in and having to do it against McDavid and Edmonton. Oh, just as we lost Mike. We'll pull him back in just a moment when he does return. As we mentioned, if you're just popping in, Dylan Sandberg is the guy that's out tonight, and Logan Stanley is going to pop in and play with Nate Schmidt on that third pairing. We just lost you, but just thoughts on that, and the big challenge for the big guy tonight, going in against a team with this much offensive firepower in the Oilers.
Yeah, I would agree with you that Logan Stanley, when he was in the lineup, it's not like he did anything to take himself out of the lineup. And I understand what the Jets are trying to do here. They have eight defensemen on the roster right now that they feel are all capable of playing. They want to keep them fresh. I get all that. What I don't totally understand, Huss, is why it's the same two guys in Sandberg and Schmidt who seem to be they're basically rotating the bottom pair. And the guy, to me, that could use maybe an extra little breather here is Neil Pionk. Now, we know Neil Pionk just last week, I think it was last Wednesday, that he missed the practice. The Jets practiced in New Jersey. Neil Pionk was not on the ice. Scott Arniel told me at the time that he was under the weather. And the hope is that he'd play the next day. We knew Colin Miller was coming into the game, though, the next day. And I think we all assumed, okay, this would be a perfect chance, have Miller come in for Pionk. That's not what happened. Pionk was in, so was Miller, and they took Schmidt out. And so around and around we go. And to me, like Neil Pionk, he, as you say, he struggled mightily against the Islanders. Like everybody struggled. He was in a special category of struggle against the Islanders. And I get, Huss, why they went back with the same lineup on Sunday. Like they pulled Hellebuck. Everybody was lousy. And I get what the coach was trying to do. He basically said to that entire group, you guys go fix this. I'm going to give you a chance, all of you, every single one of you, to go out and redeem yourselves, including Connor Hellebuck, who wasn't even supposed to start on Sunday. And again, the Jets responded, I thought, in a good way. They didn't get the result. That being said, if you're looking to now cycle a guy in, why not consider Neil Pionk for a quick reset here? And whatever, say that he's not 100% healthy. Like we know that he was sick last week. Maybe he's not 100%. But isn't that what this is supposed to be about? And Sandberg had some struggles like everybody else. I thought he was great against the Rangers last week, like really, really good. And to me, I kind of feel like you need Dylan Sandberg against an Oilers team because of how good he can be at suppressing offensive chances, at killing plays in his own end. Not to say Logan Stanley, he's got the capability of doing some of that for sure. To me, I just think I would want Dylan Sandberg because to me, he's absolutely in my top 6. And so I don't totally understand why he's the guy, the odd man out again here. And they got 10 games left after today. Like, I'm curious to see what the deployment looks like here down the stretch as they gear up, or as they should be gearing up for the playoffs. How many more games does Sandberg end up sitting of these final 10 after tonight? To me, the answer should be close to 0. I'm just not sure that that's what we're going to see because they probably want to get Colin Miller in some games down the stretch as well. And it just seems like right now, the only guys they are willing to take out of the lineup are Sandberg and Schmidt. Of course, you're not taking more. I mean, unless you're resting Morrissey because the game doesn't mean it. You're not taking Morrissey or DeMello or even Brendan Dillon because of what they bring. I just think Pionk has struggled so much that he's a guy that maybe should be in that rotation a little bit here because maybe it ultimately benefits him and the team in the end.
Yeah. Listen, I've got a lot of time for what Pionk's done this year. We talked at the beginning of the season. I mean, if there was one player that could have, like, with a turnaround season, could have as big an effect on the team's fortunes as anyone, Pionk in the spot he plays in the lineup would have been that guy. And I think for the most part, he has been much better this year. But it has been a struggle as of late. And I think to your point, though, I think they think of Pionk the way they think of Morrissey, the way they think of DeMello, and the way they think of Brendan Dillon. And those are the 4 cornerstones. They're going to play a lot. They're going to be playing big minutes. And if they're able to play, they're going to play, and they're just going to try to play through it. I mean, I'm certainly here for the conversation. We cannot forget, though, that this is against the Edmonton Oilers, and in a certain playoff series that ended up with brooms. Pionk was a major pain in the ass for a certain guy wearing 97 in the past. So, maybe that will bring the best out of him. Hellebuck's going tonight.
Yeah.
He went in the game. I kind of thought that when they started him against Washington, that might mean LB goes tonight and kind of go back and forth this week. Is just audible was called in that Sunday game, and now it's back to the schedule, which I think going into this week, assuming LB was going to play against the Caps, was going to be Helly, Oilers, Helly, Vegas, and then LB against the Sens on Saturday night.
I do wonder, Huss, if Laurent Brossoit potentially gets the Vegas game on Thursday now. wouldn't totally discount that at this stage. For those wondering,
sure, it matters what happens tonight, to be honest.
Sure.
I'm sure that's a big part of it.
The whole Jennings situation, even though he didn't start either game this past weekend, Laurent Brossoit did get his 20th appearance, which we knew was going to happen. We just thought it would be in the form of a start. It ended up coming in the form of a half a game of relief on Saturday. So he's up to 20. They got 11 games left. Can they get him the 5? And the bigger question, Huss, does it even matter at this point? Because I had some people ask me, did that appearance by Brossoit count towards his games? I said, yes, it did. I said, unfortunately for the Jets, so too did the 6 goals they gave up. That also counts towards their pursuit of the Jennings. They gave up another 3 on Sunday. They're not in the driver's seat anymore. They're still in the hunt for sure.
Well, here's the situation just on that, just to update people, because we haven't touched on it. But as bad as that weekend was and the goals that were given up, it is now an 11-game challenge between the Winnipeg Jets and the Florida Panthers for the Jennings Trophy.
Are they in a dead heat?
They're in a dead heat. They have both given up 173 goals. They have both played 71 games. So, and you know what? Just thinking out loud here, the fact that because I mean, yeah, the team's going to be going for first place. A lot of this is about trying to ramp up your game and get to where you need to be for the playoffs. Being good in game number 1 of the postseason is more important than being good in any of these games. And I think we all agree on that. But with a focus of trying to keep the puck out of their own net, which is the standard, which is the the basis, the foundation of their success this year, focusing on that for their goaltenders might not be such a bad thing, to be perfectly honest with you. But 11 games to go. Both have 173 against. The LA Kings have allowed 12 more. So when you put that in a game-by-game basis, unlikely that they could possibly catch either of those teams.
Yeah.
So so here we go for the Jennings Trophy. The final 11 games beginning tonight.
Well, you're bang on, Huss, in that, like, for sure, you gotta see the forest for the trees here, and the bigger idea is that in 11 games from now, Winnipeg's record resets to 0-0, and in a lot of ways, whether they go 11-0, 0-11. Although I suggest if they go 0-11, their playoff spot could potentially be in jeopardy. They're not going to go 0-11. But whatever their record is over these next 11, that's way less important than how they play and what shape their game is in. And because, 11 games from now, they have the same record as the team they're playing, whoever that happens to be, wherever that first game of the series happens to be played at. They're both 0-0, and it's a race to 4. And as you say, what would certainly help Winnipeg's cause, and it goes back to what was talked about a lot this morning, getting back to that sound structure, that foundation that's had some cracks in it lately. And we know that foundation is built on defense, goaltending, suppressing offense. So if they can have a good 11-game run and carry that into the playoffs, it might be a win-win in that maybe they do get the Jennings, but they also bring the style of game into the playoffs that we know this team needs to do in order to be successful. So, yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. Whether Laurent Brossoit gets those 5 appearances in these final 11, I'm not entirely sure. I think part of it's going to depend on how each game goes. As you point out, Huss, we may be more on a game-to-game basis now on the coaches deciding what the lineup looks like. And we already saw that this weekend where they called that audible. Are there more audibles to be called down the road? I don't think as we sit here right now, the Jets have the 11 games mapped out. Maybe they do, but it's written in pencil with an eraser on standby.
Someone was asking about the Florida situation as far as games. Very similar. Bob has 51 games. Stolarz has 22. So Stolarz would need 3 more appearances. And Scott Westman said, does this even matter? I mean, no. Like in the big picture, like, is that going to help you win the cup or anything like that? No. But I would suggest for both Hellebuck and Brossoit that have been brilliant for most of this season. It would be a huge feather in the cap of both of those players. And the Vezina Trophy goes to one, but I think the team would also take a lot of pride in it too. And I guess what? If you're able to do that for an 82-game season and win that award going into the playoffs, I think it's just further reinforcement of that defensive foundation that has made this team successful in the first place. And I'll tell you what, trying to win that for your goaltenders, and I mean, it's all positive. Not allowing goals will help you in each and every aspect of winning games in the regular season, in the playoffs going forward. So to me, I mean, it's all quite synergist, Mike.
I'll put it this way. There's no Jennings trophy for the playoffs, but if you can essentially win the Jennings, the equivalent of the Jennings in the playoffs, there's a good chance, Huss, that you're going to get a different, bigger trophy about 2 months into the playoffs.
Yeah, if you're the best in goals against in any series, pretty good chance you're going to win that one. Listen, it should be a really interesting game tonight, Mike. Good to see you back in one piece after doing both working and touristing for the last week and a half. I just noticed, I pulled up the results from last year, and I mean, listen, at that point it wasn't going great, the middle of February for the club, but can't help but notice the similarities to sometimes when this team heads out east. And we talk about the road trip. There's not a lot of travel. I mean, last year's roadie, a 3-1 loss in Columbus, a 4-2 loss in New Jersey, a 4-1 win against the New York Rangers, and then a loss the next day to the New York Islanders. So,
by the way, I was on that trip as well, Huss. So
Ken's going to New York next year.
He's already called it. Indeed.
Mike, enjoy the game tonight. Thanks a lot for doing this.
You bet. Have a great week.
All right, good stuff with Mike McIntyre. Over 500 in chat, folks. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give a thumbs up. We're going to continue focusing in on tonight's game coming up in just a minute with handsome Tommy Gazzola from Edmonton Sports Talk. And as we get ready for the playoffs and the playoff excitement increases, do not forget, Winnipeg Jet fans, that you can get priority access and count yourself in for the entire 2024 playoffs right now by putting down a deposit on season tickets or ticket packages for the upcoming 2024-2025 season. Head on over to winnipegjets.com/deposit. Full list of the benefits of being a season ticket member or ticket package holder for the upcoming seasons there, map and pricing and more. And if you do it now, you will be in the same seat for all of the whiteouts down at Canada Life Centre, hopefully for a long and very fun playoff run for the Winnipeg Jets. Again, right now, the We're All In campaign continues. It's winnipegjets.com/deposit for more on that. And while speaking of the playoffs, probably a trip down to Royal Sports is going to be necessary as everyone gets their whites ready for the Winnipeg Jets and whoever they're playing come April. There is simply no better sports store anywhere than Royal Sports. And if you're a Winnipeg Jet fan, thousands of pieces of Jets merchandise, whites and otherwise, all of the jerseys, and still plenty of time to get your jersey customized with your favorite player, name, number, just in time for the postseason. So much more than just Jets merch as well, though, at Royal. Tons of Bomber gear, Major League Baseball, with Jays starting up right now, NFL and more. The biggest hockey section in town, all of the spring sports loading in by the day, and tons of cool stuff on the Kings skate, snow, and surf side. Pop by and see it for yourself. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And speaking of those playoffs, I mean, if you're not in the building or the team is on the road, you know the best place to get together with your gang to watch the big game is your local Boston Pizza. All the Jets games on the big screen with big sound, not to mention those ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and some great new treats on the BP appetizer menu. There's simply nothing like getting together at your local BP. And if you are staying at home, though, you can get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, big all-Canadian matchup, rubber match between these two teams this year. Jets won in Edmonton in the first couple weeks of the season. Then the Oilers had that big comeback, the kind of weird fluke goal by Darnell Nurse, then a penalty that people are still pissed off in the chat about that led to a power play goal and a loss. So an interesting matchup tonight between two teams that did not have very fun weekends. Handsome Tommy Gazzola from Edmonton Sports Talk joins us. Tommy, great to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, Huss. I like that trip down memory lane too. I remember that was the wrap-up show for Bozone Live on Wild TV, which I host every November. And I know I'm not a hunter. I've never picked up a bow in my life, but I've done 4 seasons of the show. And Dusty filled in for me on that post game that night. And I do remember the comeback, the squiver that got through Hellebuck that Nurse scored. And yeah, if people are still bringing that up, that's great memories. Because
because we were talking about the game, and that was one of our WST games, and we were looking forward to getting the win. It was 1-0 late. And it just a bunch of things conspired very quickly to flip that game around. But let's face it, the Oilers are a very different team and in a very different place than where they were at that point. At that point, I believe they had just changed the coach. That was their 4th win in a row. Yep. Of course, they had those 2 incredibly long winning streaks. And yet we go into this game tonight with both teams comfortably in playoff spots and 2 fan bases pretty full of angst after the way the weekend went. Phil, people, make us feel a little bit better. We had a full-fledged therapy session here on this program yesterday. What was the EST post-game like after the Leafs and Sens game on Saturday and Sunday?
Yes, therapy session is probably an appropriate term because I like to call it those on EST back at our old shop too, when the team plays bad or not up to standards that the fan base wants it to. So I would actually, you know what, I should say it was more of a venting sesh for Oilers fans. There was a lot of angst on Saturday after a disappointing 6-3 loss in Toronto. The team didn't show up. Like Huss, they were getting smacked around. It was 5-0 at one point. They were just getting dummied by the Leafs. And, you know, the third period, Edmonton scored 3 goals, but it didn't matter. I mean, the Leafs were just sitting back and people were saying, oh, at least they got some momentum going into Ottawa on Sunday. And Matt Cassian and I had to tell people, and Dusty was on the post-game show as well that night. It was like, if you guys think that that's momentum going into a Sunday matchup against Ottawa because they scored 3 goals in garbage time when they're getting their butts kicked, you give your head a shake because that means absolutely diddly squat. And sure enough, the next day in Ottawa, Edmonton goes in. They take a 3-1 lead against the Sens. They blow the 3-1 lead. And on a night where they only gave up 16 shots, end up with 5 goals against. And then a lot of our listeners and viewers were saying, you know, Calvin Pickard, man, you need a save from this guy. If this is the goaltending tandem, the Oilers don't have a hope in hell. And then I said, okay, if we're going to go through each goal and we're going to neglect the busted coverage in front of Pickard on almost every one of them, then I think we're doing a disservice to the goaltenders because the defense all weekend long was absolutely putrid. You could even mix in the forwards and their back checks and their lapses in judgment when it came to the defensive side of the puck. So even though Pickard finished with 11 saves on 16 shots on Sunday, that one against the Sens, that was all on defensive breakdowns, just dumb plays in their own zone. The PK, Huss, goes 1 for 4 against Ottawa. 1 for 4. You kill one against an Ottawa team that I think they were like 22nd going into action on Sunday on the power play. So it was a bad weekend in Ontario. So yes, the Oilers should be a little salty, and they get a salty Winnipeg Jets club, and that should lead to a great hockey game between 2 highly skilled teams that are capable of much better.
It's hilarious just listening to you talk about that, because I mean, you could literally pick out a bunch of things that were almost identical to post-game coverage here in Winnipeg. Yeah, she sounds familiar from Schickster. Listen, you very rarely hear a coach refer to, quote, a complete no-show. And that was what the Jets had against the Islanders on Saturday. That was an earlier game, and we'll see the entire Oiler-Leaf game, but you sort of saw the way that it was going, and then it was 5-0 and pretty much over. And as we all know, in any Canadian market, you're going to get killed when you play like that anyways. You do it on HNIC against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and there's an exponential amount more of anger that's going to come from your fan base. So that it did not do it well. But let me ask you this. I mean, listen, this will hopefully for both teams be a blip over the course of a regular season. It is right now about preparing for the playoffs. But we haven't seen this team against Winnipeg in a long time. It has been one of the craziest roller coaster seasons I can remember for any team in the Oilers. The terrible start, the wins, where is this team now? And post-trade deadline, maybe speak to the Carrick and the Adam Henrique additions. How playoff ready does this team look right now? Or what are Oiler fans expecting to see tonight and in the other final remaining games of the season before things get, you're playing for keeps?
Yeah, playoff ready. I think after that weekend, you'd say they're not at all. But they're trying to gear up. I think, we've seen a lot of line shuffling in the last couple of weeks from Chris Knobloch, and some people assume that has to do with trying to find some combinations heading into the postseason. We know how good Nugent Hopkins and Hyman are with McDavid. That line can be as dominant as any in the National Hockey League and has been when it's together. Comparing the roster to what we saw the last time the Jets and Oilers got together, it is different. Like Corey Perry came in. Corey Perry's been very good. Carrick comes over alongside Henrique. And the bottom six, even though there's a lot of complaints about the bottom six still from some fans, and you know how it is, it's a vocal minority, but you look at the bottom six compared to what it was the last time Edmonton and Winnipeg locked horns, like Sam Gagner, he's in the minors. Dylan Holloway, he's in the minors. James Hamblin, in the minors. There are guys that are no longer on this roster, and that's because they've been, knocked out of the lineup because of better NHL players. And so Carrick won't play tonight. He's been okay. Like he's a meat and potatoes guy. He's a centerman. He can kill. He did score his first goal as an Oiler last week, which is nice to see. It was a nice grinder, greasy goal. So that's a good thing. And then Henrique is starting to find his game. He's kind of been shuffled around the roster, or the lineup, I should say. He's, at times been a third line center. He's been a first line left winger. I think he's on the second line today with Draisaitl. So
sounds like Kevin Hayes when the Jets got him in 2019, Remis.
Yeah, that's Henrique right now. And you know what? He scored the other night in Ottawa. He's got 2 goals now, and he's responsible. He's a veteran guy. So they have a deeper lineup than they did the last time the Jets and Oilers got together. And it's an evolution, as we know. And so they should, in theory, be ready for the postseason. They've got 13 games to fine-tune things. And, the goaltenders have been adequate. Defense, not so much over the weekend. But Troy Stetcher's been an interesting addition as well. It gives them a bit of a different look. They finally have 7 defensemen on the roster. They got super lucky rolling 6 guys basically all season after they sent down Philip Broberg. And they only had 3 man games lost to injury until they brought in Stetcher, and they lost Desharnais last week for a couple of games. Outside of that, they've stayed really, really healthy, and a lot of it has to do with luck. But, yeah, this is a better Oilers team, and you know what they did over the weekend was unacceptable, and they should know that, and maybe they learned their lesson and bring their A game against the Jets team that I'm looking at and going, that's a legit contender.
Well, and listen, I mean, we heard from Bowness today, and we just played Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, they say you're not winning in this game if you're getting outworked. And I think you're going to see a lunch pail mentality for a team tonight that is looking to try to get back to a defensive structure that has them tied for the best goals against in the National Hockey League. You wouldn't have known that from watching certainly the games in Jersey or the Islanders, but you move on, and maybe in some ways this is a great test for Winnipeg, because if you don't do that, this is a team that can make you look pretty darn bad. Looking at the lineup here, Nuge, McDavid, Hyman, Henrique, Dry, and Fogle on number 2, Kane, McLeod, and Perry, number 3, and then Janmark, Ryan, and Brown, the 4th line. Ekholm, Bouchard, Nurse, and Ceci, Kulak, Desharnais, pretty much the consistent 6 all year long. And Stewie Skin's going to get the start tonight. I have to ask you about Zach Hyman. 50 goals on the weekend. I mean, obviously paying attention to what you guys have been saying, and this isn't new, but the best free agent signing in Oilers history, probably. And I saw the clip that the Oilers put out about the reaction of all the players in Ottawa. I believe it was in Ottawa after he scored his scored his 50th. I mean, a beloved teammate, a guy that, just helps you win, not flashy, but 50 goals. I mean, his value just continues to build, and he's a guy that he's smart too. He knows what to do playing with a guy like 97 and making the most of it. Just tell us about this season and his impact on the Oilers' success.
He's one guy, Huss. You talked about the roller coaster ride from Edmonton this year as a team. He's one guy who's been consistent the whole time and at an elite level, obviously hitting the 50-goal mark with 13 games to go. And Matt Cassian talks about it on our pre- and post-game show. He says, hey, if you've got kids watching at home that are playing hockey, yeah, you'd love to say, watch Connor McDavid, see how he does this, see how he does that. There's only one Connor McDavid, and there's only going to be so few players in the future that are going to be able to emulate what Connor McDavid does and even, surpass what McDavid is capable of doing, because every generation or two we see something like that. So Cass always goes, watch Zach Hyman and the lunch pail mentality that he brings into every game. He doesn't have the best shot. He doesn't skate the best. It honestly looks funny the way he chugs along when he's skating. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy, but he goes in there. He's determined. He doesn't take a shift off. He gives 110% all the time. Yes, it's a cliche term. And he works for every single opportunity that he gets. And he's learned to read and react off of Connor McDavid. He readily and fully admitted it after the game. He's like, I wouldn't have 50 goals. I wouldn't be anywhere near 50 goals if I didn't play with Connor McDavid. But to his credit, he's the only guy that scored 50 playing alongside McDavid for the majority of his season. I know people will say, well, what about Leon Draisaitl? Draisaitl's been more or less been on his same or his own line. He plays power play with McDavid, and Draisaitl in his own right is a superstar caliber player, always has been. And so like the true lone player to specifically play on McDavid's line for a season to achieve these heights in the goal scoring column is Zach Hyman. And we saw Pat Maroon get to the high 20s. I think it was 27 and 16, 17. And, the revolving door of right wingers that McDavid has had. I remember Ty Ratty, who was just like, this is what it was. It's like Ty Ratty had a really good training camp. I think he led the NHL in preseason scoring, and people are like,
he's getting picked like third round in hockey drafts.
Yep. And by like third week of the season, he's on the fourth line. So, Ty Ratty is one of them. Lucic had one and a half good seasons as an Oiler, thinking that, he'd play with Connor McDavid. That lasted briefly.
Well, it's funny, Tom. Like, yeah. I'm looking at chat, and someone said my mom could score 30 playing with McDavid. I mean, it's fun to crack on that.
Yes.
Guess what? Zach Hyman's the only guy not named Draisaitl to score 50. And listen, Draisaitl, I think we've all agreed the guy's won a heart. I mean, he's a true superstar in the game. But I mean, you talk about money well spent. That hasn't been something synonymous with the Oilers very often. Outside of certain top picks, this is the best money that they ever spent.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up with our old pal, the Natural? How's Evander doing these days?
Oh, not well. Not well. No.
What's his situation?
I think 4 assists in the last 17 or 18 games for him. He was one guy with Hyman that started out the year pretty good. There was a stretch where he had 8 goals in 8 games. And everybody was saying, look at what Hyman's doing. Look at what Kane's doing. They're the only guys kind of giving Edmonton any life. when Edmonton was 2-9-1 and starting to climb their way out of the basement. And I know he was nicked up for, a good chunk of time earlier in the season. I'd probably say like late November into December. But there's been so much time since then to heal up. And I know that these guys go through all kinds of bumps and bruises, and they don't like to talk about their injuries and stuff like that. But this is an Oilers team that had a 9-day break with the bye week and the All-Star break. And you would think that in theory, a guy like that probably has enough time to recoup. And it just, I'll say it, Huss, like it looks like he's not engaged. And the disappointing thing is, when he is engaged, he is a game changer. And when he wants it, look out. Like, he's scary to face because he's big, strong, intimidating, and he can score from distance. But when he doesn't want it, he's just another guy out there. And unfortunately, if you're an Oiler fan, you're watching Evander Kane, who's just kind of doing TV turns and, every now and then gets a shot on goal, but his effectiveness has been limited. And he was nicked up on Sunday. I know there was some discussion as to why he got the maintenance day, which was probably not the best choice of words to come from the Oilers that day when they announced that Kane wouldn't be playing. There was the spat with Draisaitl on the bench. You know what? These are two veteran guys. Hopefully they can put it aside, whatever it was. And when the playoffs come, they can get their, what together and be on the same page. But it hasn't been good enough. And I don't know. To me, it looks like a will to win and a desire to play the right way type of thing of late. I gave him the benefit of the doubt every post game for a good month and a half, us. And then, you get to a certain point where you talk to people around the organization, they're just like, yeah, you need more from him. And you say, well, is he hurt? Not really. Guys get nicked up, but they just need more. And he's kind of in this funk right now where there's no results, and it's disappointing.
He's a guy that, listen, we all know he loves the spotlight. And I think part of coming to Edmonton was the fact that, he was told, hey, you're going to get a chance to play with the big boys. You're going to be up there. And at times he has done that and, has produced. But if you play your way out of that top six in Edmonton and all of a sudden you're part of a bottom six that is, frankly, has a different job to do every time that you go out there, you just wonder how all in Evander is. But come playoff time, when the intensity of the playoffs gets there, he'll be a pain in the ass for whoever the team is playing. Speaking of that, it's funny. We've had this three-way race here in the Central for the better part of the last few months, and now Nashville has already entered the chat because they haven't lost in 2 months, it seems. But it was like, hey, try to win the division. You'll have home ice in the first 2 rounds. You'll get a wild card team. Well, the wild card teams don't look like pushovers at all right now. You're basically, barring something crazy with Nashville running the table and continuing to do that, they're 5 back of Winnipeg tonight going in. Let's assume Nashville is a playoff team. It will be one of LA or Vegas in all likelihood. The Oilers are probably going to finish in second in that division, and Vancouver in number 1. In your mind, what's the best first round matchup for the Edmonton Oilers, and is there one that probably makes people a lot more nervous than others?
The best one would probably be the LA Kings, and that's where it's lined up right now, if things continue the way it's been going of late. So LA has given Edmonton a run for its money this season. I know one of those games was really early in the season, but the Kings-Oilers matchup, Edmonton, with the 2 wins in the last 2 postseasons against LA. LA has bolstered their lineup. They've got better offensive capabilities and depth, but the goaltending, you look at Cam Talbot and Big Save Dave, and, Phoenix Copley's been nicked up. I think he tore up his knee. So that's the one hole that the Kings have. And they had that last year. They thought that they had solved it with Korpisalo. Edmonton cracked Korpisalo about 2 games in. They found out you just go high glove on the guy, although he made them look bad on Sunday night, oddly enough, against the Sens. But so LA would probably be the best matchup for the Oilers, even though there's no ideal matchup, I don't think. The worst case scenario is if Vegas keeps rolling and Edmonton flounders and pisses away points like it has over the weekend and winds up in a wild card spot, has to face a Central Division team. I think any one of Colorado, Dallas, or Winnipeg should scare the living from Oilers fans, because it's going to be an absolute gauntlet in the West.
I guess I didn't realize, like, again, there's games in hand, and for folks that aren't watching, I mean, Vancouver's got 98 points. They're 10 clear of Edmonton. You can just about put an X by them for the division. Never mind, they could have clinched a playoff spot last night. The Oilers do have 2 games in hand, but you got to get points in those games. They're only 1 ahead of LA and 3 ahead of the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, I hadn't really wrapped my head around the potential that Edmonton isn't going to be the second place team. But I mean, I guess you have to sort of start considering that, especially the way things went. And we'll see what happens tonight. There's going to be an inferno in one chat room, whether it's in here in Winnipeg or whether it's in Edmonton. But that Vegas team is, like, I think there's a very good chance that the Kings are the wild card team.
Could be.
And it's Edmonton-Vegas in the first round. And how's that for a reward for a big turnaround season? And great. You get the Stanley Cup champions in the first round. I don't know if you watched that St. Louis Vegas game last night, but that was playoff hockey. I mean, they are engaged. They are ready to go. And it was an absolute war for the better part of 60 minutes. And no easy ones. The entire West, though, was so fascinating. I mean, as wide open as I think we've ever seen it. I really do think that Colorado right now, they've won 9 in a row. They are reminding everybody who won it all a couple years ago, and they've got that in the room. And I think it's certainly most likely that they win the Central Division. Although Dallas is tied with them, they played one more game. This little funk by the Jets, if they'd won 2 or 3 against those teams on the weekend, it would be the same way it had been for the last couple of weeks with 3 teams tied there. But the Jets got to work to avoid at least starting on the road. And then, I mean, I don't know what you can say about Nashville. I mean, they're coming in the full Undertaker move. I mean, this is like the hamburger run of the Ottawa Senators a few years back, where, I mean, for the better part of about a quarter of the season, they just haven't lost in regulation. If you don't do that, you'll be there. I still wonder how they match up against those top teams. But, I mean, even like the Avalanche, I still believe are the scariest team. Like, Vancouver has been amazing all season long. Tocchet's done a great job of coaching them, but that's a team that hasn't done anything before in the playoffs. That's going to be something new for them. So, I mean, you can literally look at every single team in the Western Conference that is likely to be part of the playoff dance and make an argument why they could win a first round, win a couple rounds. I mean, it's as interesting a potential Stanley Cup playoff tournament as I can ever remember, Tommy.
Yeah, I call it a gauntlet. Like the West, who knows? It's going to be no holds bar, a battle regardless. Those 8 teams are capable of so much. I have the same doubts about the Canucks that you do and that you just brought up. But at the same time, I'm like, they've been so consistent. Yeah. They have so many good pieces. And I look at the Dallas Stars, and there's times where the Stars can look pedestrian, but then you look at their lineup, you go, well, there's no bad players on this team. They got the goaltending. They have really good defense, so they're capable of going on a heater. The Jets are solid from top to bottom. Edmonton, I think here in our market, and this probably happens in Winnipeg, I'm assuming it does, it's gotten to a certain point where the team has elevated its play and is looking at a 5th straight year in the postseason, that you don't look at just the good things that this team does and the good elements that it possesses. You focus on the bad, and we nitpick, media and fan base alike, and sometimes we do it in concert with one another. So every team could be a legit threat in this Western Conference, and that part of it is kind of scary. But at the end of the day, we all get to benefit from it because it's going to be fun to watch. And as hockey fans, that first round is going to be crazy. But I don't know who to put money on if I were to be a betting man in this scenario. It's just going to be wild. And
we'll get you in the lock shop and put a gun to your head before the end of the season, Tommy, heading into the playoffs. But I mean, as I say, there's so many different possibilities of who could play who. The bottom line is, no matter what, I mean, it's not like the East where if you win, you might be playing a team like Washington who listen, they're playing nice lately. I mean, they still have like a minus 27 goal differential. I mean, it's just nuts. There's no easy outs in the West, and it is going to be a war in 4 different series when we get going in a few weeks. And our dream series of a lock shop bowl between Winnipeg and Edmonton probably is only possibly happening in that 4th round or in that 3rd round. So we'd all sign up for that if it happened. But in the meantime, a head-to-head matchup tonight between 2 teams that I have a feeling are going to look pretty desperate for a win, or certainly should, considering what transpired for both of them on the weekend. Tommy, say what's up to the fellas back at EST. We'll look forward to this one tonight and talk to you soon back here in the Peg.
Thank you, Huss. Looking forward to it, man.
Always great. There's Tom Gazzola. You can give him a follow on Twitter at Tom Gazzola. And, of course, check out post-game coverage after Oiler games over on Edmonton Sports Talk with Tom. Give those fellas a sub when you pop by there as well. All right, let's get Remis back in here. And Reem, we've talked a lot about the current plight of both of these teams, and now we get ready for a huge night in the National Hockey League. We'll get to the Coolbet lines in just a minute. But, as they say, I think nervous angst is a good way of describing a lot of people that are going to the game tonight, myself included. But at the same time, I loved what we heard from Bones and especially Nikolai Ehlers, and I'm just hoping that we get the good version of the Winnipeg Jets that's there, that's willing, that knows that they have to go and equal their opponents, if not completely outwork them. And if they do that, I think they'll have a pretty good chance to win.
Yeah, we're not asking for, a win and a shutout or anything. Just want to see an honest effort and putting in the hard work and in the appropriate areas. And that's what Rick Bowness spoke about. And Nikolai Ehlers, too, said, they got to get back to their 5-on-5 game we saw. I'm sure they went over some video of what it looked like then and what it looked like over the weekend. And always great when a superstar like Connor McDavid comes in, even if we're going to have to be seeing a lot of visiting fans tonight, Huss. But I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. And, yeah, busy night in the NHL schedule. As some teams are, we're at the counting down, almost 10 games left, and teams are starting to clinch playoff spots. So I don't know if can the Jets do that on this road trip? I don't even know what. I haven't even looked at magic number or anything.
No, well, I mean, put it this way: the Canucks could have last night, and they have 898 points. The Jets are 5 back of them, so you're probably talking about 3 more wins, and that's assuming that the teams behind them. I guess who's second right now? It would be St. Louis at 80, and that was a devastating lost point last night. Man, they battled hard to get back and tie it up. And then that Buchnevich penalty shot, a crazy save by Logan Thompson. He was really good. And it sounds like he's actually going back-to-back tonight against the Nashville Predators. Listen, let's get over to Coolbet.com and check out our lines for tonight. Good night to throw a DK fantasy lineup in as well. May have to fire one of those up because there is so many games. Started off, top teams in the Atlantic. The Bruins and Panthers going head-to-head. The Panthers breaking their 4-game losing streak with their win against the Flyers on Sunday. Florida minus 138. Boston on the road plus 117 underdogs. The Flyers plus 152 dogs on the road against the Rangers at minus 180. The Penguins, RIP to their season. They are at home plus 157 dogs. Canes minus 187. You've got the Red Wings and Capitals. This is a massive game. We've actually seen a bit of line movement. This was minus 118 for the Caps and even money for Detroit when we did the lock shop. It's now minus 126 for Washington and Detroit plus 107. Charlie Lindgren's just been on a roll, man, as we all saw on Sunday. Devils are in Toronto to take on the Leafs. Leafs minus 153. New Jersey plus 130. That game I mentioned, Vegas in Nashville. And Vegas played last night, an overtime game. Nice spot for the Preds, being home rested and ready for them. Minus 137 for Nashville, plus 116 for the Golden Knights. We'll finish off with the Jets-Oiler game. Other ones, Flames and Blackhawks. Flames minus 174 in Chicago. Avalanche, a massive minus 405 favorite against Les Canadiens. The Arizona Coyotes minus 165 home favorites against the Blue Jackets, who were plus 140. Ducks Kraken going at it in Seattle. Seattle minus 205. And the Dallas Stars. Every time we look, who's Dallas playing tonight? It seems to be the San Jose Sharks. So Dallas minus 368 favorites. That being said, they had to go to an 8-round shootout to beat San Jose a few weeks ago, and then followed that up with the 7-6 overtime loss. So they certainly haven't been blowing the Sharks out, but a massive, massive favorite. But let's get to this Jets-Oilers game tonight. The Oilers are favored on the road at minus 126. The Winnipeg Jets are plus 107 on the money line. The total for this game is 6. If you, I know Dusty was putting something together, the EST parlay. We'll let you know about that in a second. But under 6.5 is at minus 131. As far as the player props tonight, Zach Hyman. It's amazing to see this, Remis. You got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and even if it's just by a bit, the lowest goal prop at plus 130 is in fact 50-goal man Zach Hyman. McDavid plus 131, Draisaitl plus 141, and then you get into the Jets with Kyle Connor at plus 175 and Tyler Toffoli plus 210. But just more evidence of the goal-scoring machine that Zach Hyman has turned into this season.
Yeah, waiters in chat asked during the show, he's like, how many, talking about scoring a 5-on-5 versus scoring on the power play. Listen to this. Draisaitl, 13 goals at 5-on-5. Warren Fogle, 13 at 5-on-5. McDavid, second with 15 5-on-5 goals. You know how many 5-on-5 goals Zach Hyman has this year? More than double McDavid. He's got 33 of his 50 at 5-on-5.
Wow.
What a machine. And yeah, I mean, he knows how to go to the net and get his stick there and on the puck in. I mean, we've all seen the heat map. They're all like right in front. But as Tom said, like, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. And he's the only one other than Draisaitl to have 50 goals. And I remember Ty Ratty. It reminds me of everyone thought Colby Armstrong when he's playing with Crosby. He was a popular sleeper pick in fantasy, when they were playing together. So credit to Zach. What an incredible story. And I think it sparked a lot of conversation, too, about the best free agent signings of all time.
Period.
And
not just for the Oilers.
Yeah,
I mean, he
certainly
gotta
up
be
there.
up there. I heard the guys in Toronto stay lamenting the fact that Zach got away, and apparently Dubas didn't want to give him a no move after the first year, and Edmonton said, no, you can come here and do that. You're perfect for us, and it really has been really, really good money well spent. All right, let's get to the Coolbet exclusives. It's the Lock Shop Bowl tonight. And if you go down, there's an EST parlay and there's a WST parlay. Dusty's for the Edmonton side of things that we hope loses is McDavid, 2 or more points. Bouchard a point. Yeah, the only time we'll ever say that.
The only time you'll ever talk about, a nice parlay we put together. I hope this one loses.
Yeah. Well, this is him. This is all him on the Edmonton side of things. McDavid with 2, Bouchard 1, Edmonton, Winnipeg under 6.5 goals, and the Oilers to win. That one's boosted to 7 plus 700. And considering where things are at, I didn't want to make this too complicated here. We're looking for a dub. A Winnipeg Jets win. Nikolai Ehlers and Josh Morrissey both to record a point. That one boosted to plus 450 under the Winnipeg Sports Talk parlay in the Coolbet exclusives. Now, with all the games, the Nasty Chat was at it with their prop parlay, and we've got one as well for the if you like the player props. Mikko Rantanen, 1 or more goals. Adam Fox, 1 or more points, and Zach Hyman, 4 or more shots. That's plus 635. And for our partner parlay, we just put together a couple games, some games that we liked. Capitals to win on the money line, and then the Canes to beat Pittsburgh and the Rangers to beat Philly, both in regulation. That one boosted up to plus 625. You can find that under Lock Shop and the Coolbet exclusives. There's also plenty of second round, or I guess technically third round NCAA March Madness stuff. Golf boosted odds specials for the Houston Open, which gets going on Thursday. We will make the picks tomorrow on the Lock Shop for that. And one other thing, Remis, it is important. We touched this a little bit today in Lock Shop. And by the way, you can check that out at noon before Winnipeg Sports Talk over the EST channel with myself and Dustin Nielsen. We're also getting into Major League Baseball futures. And we'll maybe get into a little Jays talk setting up this season, which, if you can believe it, is getting going on Thursday after, of course, the Dodgers kicked it off with all the attention on Shohei Ohtani in Korea on the weekend last week.
Yeah, I have a hard time counting that. Did anyone even see it? I mean, I saw some highlights, but I wasn't paying attention. It's funny, I did fantasy drafts. I didn't even look at those stats. So the real opening day, Thursday, there's the Blue Jays, 5th best odds, plus 900 for the AL winner behind Yankees, Astros, Rangers, and Orioles. So I don't know. I'm kind of wrapped up in this hockey right now, but I think once I see baseball on TV, I love the late games as well. So I think I'll be more into it then once my fantasy. I'm just admiring my lineups right now that I drafted.
The win total. The Jays win total is 86.5.
Let's see.
I know their season was a little underwhelming last year. I'm taking the over. I think they've got a great pitching staff, and there's no way they hit as poorly as they did last year. So I think they'll be a playoff team, and I think that they'll win 87 or more games. So I'm going to be jumping in on that. We'll get a few more of our best bets tomorrow in the Lock Shop for the beginning of the baseball season. Maybe we'll see if Johnny can come on tomorrow. Give us a bit of a Jays primer before day one. I'll fire him a message after the show.
Sure.
But listen, just speaking of baseball and speaking of gambling, a couple big stories we just have to hit. What did you think of Shohei Ohtani's the statement yesterday? You didn't take questions, but he, through the interpreter, very clearly pinned this entirely on his former interpreter, saying that he had been stolen from, did not know of this, was not aware of it until just before the first game in Korea. There's no gray area with what Ohtani said yesterday, Remis.
Yeah, I don't know how much you buy it, Huss. I mean, seems like, wasn't the original
I do, because there's no wiggle room. There was nothing vague about it. This was a clear 100% denial of any involvement in any gambling, having ever placed a wager on any sport, period. And the one thing I'll say is that the interpreter role that this guy had was much more than that. He was he was getting paid to basically be the guy's best friend, manager, interpreter, doing all those things. And I think he had a hand in doing a lot of things for him. Again, new country, new culture, that certainly what the Ohtani camp is saying is that was taken advantage of. So MLB is definitely investigating this. The feds are investigating this as well. So to go out with such a clear-cut denial, you're going to get busted if you are lying. So I'm going to give Shohei the benefit of the doubt. His props are all off the board, though, because people are wondering about a suspension, what could potentially happen. I certainly hope for the game and, for him personally, because I'm a huge fan of his, that everything he said is true. And he is exonerated from any wrongdoing, and he can move on. But the other big story involving gambling is this story from this guy from the Raptors, who, by the way, credit to him for somehow making the Raptors relevant at this point in the season as they stumble to the finish line. But this one's got a lot more legs, Remis, as far as something that could be facing major suspension with the irregularities in the circumstances that led to some of these prop bets.
Yes, Jonte Porter is being investigated for irregularities in prop betting. So is DraftKings Sportsbook saying the biggest win of a couple nights were on Porter under props. in games where he left with an eye injury. It was on
Early.
Under 0.5 3-pointers was the big, and some of the under props. 5.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. That was in one of the games. So there are a couple of games there. We'll have to see what happens. I don't know why someone would get involved in this, but certainly raises the eyebrows when you see a player that's such a low-profile player having the biggest handle or the biggest winnings of that day wagered on. Usually, you'd think it'd be on a star player, but no, it's on Jonte Porter.
Some random dude on the Raptors that I'd never heard of beforehand. And I mean, is this true, like this business with his Discord?
I don't know. So apparently he was involved in some Discord giving out like crypto, and allegedly there were people in there and they were thanking him. So I'm not sure, but that's I don't know if I want to go there on this show, but
they'll get to the bottom of it.
They'll figure there is being investigated. The allegation is for sure that a lot of money was won on under props, and those were games where he left sick. So they have
pulled himself from the game early on.
So the league's looking into it, and these sports books have a lot of things that come up that you get flagged.
Oh yeah.
So they're like, this is kind of suspicious that so many bets are coming in on under props on this guy, and he left. So they're gonna look into it. So that was perked up too. Yesterday, all these gambling stuff, and I don't know. I guess people can't stay away with all the gambling on the TV. I mean, we're talking about gambling here, but it's surprising that players would be getting involved.
I think. Well, yeah, that's pure stupidity. And I mean, that guy, if he's actually doing it, that's more than just getting a lifetime ban from the NBA. I mean, there's federal charges that go along with that as well. So that's big time trouble. The players all know it. I mean, that is the one cardinal sin. And I think with it legalized, I think that the books are far more likely and able to identify red flags and prevent that. And that was a part of it, as much as some people don't like it. That being said, I do. Let's cash this WSD parlay tonight with the Jets, Oilers, and Josh Morrissey on our pick. Just before we go, because game night, we do got to get the pot up right away. Did you see this business? This is non-sport. This business with the bridge in Baltimore?
I woke up this morning and saw it was as horrific. Seeing this thing fall down. Yeah. A big boat crashed into it and it just collapsed. That
bridge is 1.6 miles long. It's one of the largest bridges, I believe, in the United States. And that shot, and you could see cars going across it. I mean, it was in the middle of the night, 1:30 in the morning there. And at the time, it didn't look like, you couldn't see from the camera shot that we were looking at who was on, but they do fear that, a number of people, is a potential mass casualty event, and the long-term ramifications of that bridge in Baltimore not being open. I think they're just scratching the surface. But anyways, hopefully, hoping for the best for anyone that was affected by that. It was just an absolutely stunning thing to see last night. Folks, great stuff today. Remo, you know how positive I'm bringing the positive vibes tonight to the game. I'm changing it up. I just washed it, bringing it back. The party jersey is going to be in the stands tonight.
The party, I was going to say, wear, because your other jersey is Sandberg, and can you wear it if he's a healthy scratch?
I can, but I'd already determined this has nothing to do with him being a healthy scratch. I'd already said I'm trying to change the vibe, change the mojo, and I will be doing my part and getting ready for the playoffs with the white party jersey. If you see someone in a white party at the game tonight, it's probably me. Come and say hi. Folks, that's going to do it for us. We got to get this podcast up so people can check it out before the game. Shout out to everyone that joined us live on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Thank you to Tommy G, as well as Mike McIntyre for jumping on. Remis did an awesome job cutting up all that interesting audio from this morning, including Rick Bowness and Nikolai Ehlers. And here's to a very upbeat, positive, happy chat tomorrow after tonight's game between the Jets and the Oilers. Huge thanks to all the Winnipeg Sports Talk sponsor family that makes this show happen each and every day. We couldn't do it without you. And, of course, all of you for making us a part of your day. Go Jets, go. Enjoy this game tonight. Let's get this back on the right track for the final 10 games after this evening. The puck drops at 7. Enjoy the game tonight, and make sure to be back here, win or lose, 1 p.m. tomorrow live on YouTube and right around 3:30 in your podcast feed. Have a good one, everyone, and enjoy this one.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.